Hi, my name is Naomi Nix, and I'm a member of Princeton's class of 2010. I got involved in activities early at Princeton. So I started off as a writer and reporter for the Daily Princetonian. First, I was writing for the street section, writing reviews on campus performances, and then I started doing longer pieces on campus culture. And I then became an associate editor at the Prince. And then I also got involved. I started transitioning and trying to learn more about multimedia storytelling. So I got involved in WPRB. At the time, we were starting a new news program. And there, for that program, I interviewed different professors and alumni, including General David Petraeus, former General David Petraeus. And I also ended up, because I was very much interested in journalism, I ended up freelancing for local newspapers in town, primarily the Trenton Times. So I covered campus lectures, different things that were happening on campus, and also covered Princeton town politics for the paper. So I knew I wanted to be a journalist since before I even arrived to Princeton's campus. And so that's why I got involved in the student newspaper and in freelancing and for WPRB, because I wanted to build up a reservoir of clips that I could send to newspapers and publications so that I could eventually get a job. So after I graduated from college, I worked for a startup called Patch.com. At the time, AOL had decided to invest heavily in hyper-local news. So I covered a small community, a suburban community in Northern Virginia. From there, I started working for the Chicago Tribune, where I was part of what's called MetPro. It was a program for young journalists of color to kind of get their feet wet in a big newsroom. So I covered everything from murders and car crashes to politics of the city, to the 2012 teacher strike, to business issues happening in Chicago. So from the Chicago Tribune, I ended up working for a New Jersey paper called the Star-Ledger. And there I started off as a night reporter. So I was covering a lot of late breaking news and also pitching. I knew I didn't want to stay in that position. I wanted to get a promotion. So I started pitching longer features that were making the front page. And, I did that sort of on my off hours. After about 6 months in that position, I started working as the paper's City Hall reporter. So I covered Newark, New Jersey, and I covered the first mayoral election after Cory Booker took his Senate seat. And it was between a man named Raz Baraka, who's the current mayor, and Shavar Jeffries. And I just covered I covered local politics. I covered the tensions between the city council and the mayor's office. And at the time, there was a lot of political strife around the city's education system. So I started covering protests about the superintendent and covering the superintendent's tenure. And I found that I really, really liked education reporting because I think it gets at the heart of some of the inequity issues that I care so deeply about. And I took a job working for a startup news site that was dedicated solely to education coverage. It was called The 74. And there I did more longer stories, more meatier stories about sort of education inequities in our education system. And then from there, I went to my current job, which now I work for Bloomberg News, and I cover, I'm on what's called our corporate influence team. So this is a team of reporters that's dedicating to, figuring out what companies are doing in Washington behind the scenes and how are they going about doing it. And so we cover a lot of like, what laws are lobbyists pushing and how much money are companies funneling into their influence campaigns, and what's their strategy to get what they want done, and who's affected by it. It's probably the best job I've had so far, and I think it has proven to be a role in which you really get to see money influence power at work in our society. And it really explains a lot to me personally about why our country is structured the way it is. Okay, so what advice do I have? My first advice is just practical, which is to say that in journalism, you get jobs by showing that you've done the job in the past, which means you get clips. So if you want to be a journalist, you need to be pursuing internships. You need to be writing for the student newspaper or the press club or local news publications or whatever. The idea is to get a body of work that you can then send out to editors and hiring managers to say, hey, look, this is what I've done. My second piece of advice is to network. Listen, as a student, and particularly at Princeton, you have the ability to just email anyone who went to Princeton, who works at a place that you are interested in, and saying, hey, I'm interested in journalism, and I'm trying to get a better sense of the landscape. Would you be up for telling me a little bit about your career path? The truth is, you'll learn that people like talking about themselves. And when you're not asking them directly for a job, you're just asking them for advice, they see that as an easier request to fulfill. And so I would do that. And that doesn't mean they might not help you get a job down the line, but you don't want to start with that. And then I would start to find topics that you're interested in, particularly for your senior thesis. Like if you're interested in becoming a journalist, you might want to pick a senior thesis topic that could, become fodder for a really good journalism project. And you do, eventually in journalism, you want a lane, something that you become an expert in. And so it's, you have the ability to really develop that now. What I wish I would have known when I was your age is that one of the most important career skills you can develop is to have confidence and to exude that confidence to others. The truth is, so much about who gets what assignments, who gets what promotion, isn't always determined by how much, what your skills are or what you've accomplished. Often it's at least in part informed by how much confidence you project that you can get the job done. So I would say, not only if you don't feel confident, if you've just been given an assignment that feels daunting or you're not sure how you can get it done, trust me, I've been there. Every journalist has been there. And sometimes these projects are intimidating, but don't let your editor or any of your managers know you're intimidated. Just do it. Just keep going. And the other thing I would add to that's related is if you're sensing, because of race reasons or cultural reasons or gender, that someone isn't taking you seriously or they're doubting your ability to get something done, don't listen to them. Use your critics and your doubters as fuel to go even further in your field, because that's on them. Your job is to just do the best that you can do, and to be willing to talk about your accomplishments and to express confidence in pursuing even more ambitious projects.